Welcome back to Benny's Custom Works, proudly supported by Sparesbox and Valvoline. Don't forget BCW5 on checkout. This week, we've got an all new project car. This isn't actually the project car, or the spin on this one is this is the donor engine for the project car. We're not actually going to show you the project car yet because it's not here. It's in the country, but it's not here yet. It's from Japan. It's a platform we've never done anything with before, and it's a hybrid. All of you conspiracy theorists can get on there and Google on the internet and work out what hybrid we can jam a 2J in. And yeah, let us know what you think it might be. But this was the easiest and cheapest way for me to get a 2JZ. In Australia, for anyone that's not aware, 2Js are commanding absolutely ridiculous money these days. I recently rang an engine importer thinking that a turbo 2J was about $5,000, which still hurt me at $5,000. They told me it was $11,000, so with that in mind, I started looking around. Also, it's worth noting for the power goal that we've got with this combo, a stock turbo 2J is actually not going to cut it anyway. Basically, the plan is long-term to build a competitor to the Cresta, but Toyota powered. So the Cresta's in America for at least 12 months. There's still a lot of events I want to do here in Australia. So the plan for this thing's going to be probably a 5 to 6 month build time. And then hopefully we can start to do some of the drag and drive events that are going to kick off in Australia next year. Street Machine have got drag challenge weekend. There's also another drag and drive event based out of Heathcote Park in Victoria. So yeah, they're starting to become more popular. But yeah, I thought we'd do something a little bit different. The internet screams at me constantly to do 2J stuff. So here we are. This particular car is an Australian delivered JZS 160 GS 300. So that means that it's a 2JZ GE. That's a non-turbo deal. But for what we're going to do, all of the pistons and rods are going in the bin. We're going to put cams in it. We're going to port the head. Going to put pistons and rods in it. Make it all strong and nice and cool. Yeah, so the goal is at least 1,000 horsepower at the wheels. So for that, we're also going to need turbo 400 and probably a 9-inch. You could try and persist with Toyota parts. You could put a Hilux diff in it. You could try and build an A340, but being that our other cars are turbo 400 and 9-inch, when they're all back in the same country, we can share parts across the platforms, and it means we've got to carry less spares for all of the cars generally. But yeah, basically, if you're going to plan a project car, start to look around and work out what's the most cost-effective way of actually getting what you want. This fine example in front of me cost me less than $2,000 on my doorstep. Now, admittedly, this thing was on the far south coast of New South Wales, so from us down to there is about a 4.5 hour drive, so 9 hours a round trip, and my $2,000 price includes the fuel. Yeah, that was still cheaper than most of the 2JZ GEs you can find on Marketplace. There was a semi-local one for $1,700 and that got snapped up straight away. But it was also the earlier non-VVTi distributor style one. So I wanted the VVTi style head purely for the fact that it's not running the distributor and it's going to be a little bit neater. Hypertune actually make different rocker covers to suit the GE's cylinder head to make it look like a GTE head anyway. So all of the stuff that aesthetically makes it a GE engine is going to go in the bin for the most part. We're going to do a Hypertune plenum. As I already mentioned, the Hypertune rock covers. Not exactly what we're going to do for the hot side yet. That'll just depend on the budget at the time. I'm trying to keep this thing fairly cost friendly. I mean, 1,000 horsepower combo is never going to be cheap, but we still want to keep in mind that this could be attainable or budget friendly for someone building the car at home. I'm definitely going to try and do a lot of it myself, but it's also worth thinking too that if you're not good at something, while it is good to learn a new skill, potentially you're better off actually just spending your time on stuff you're good at, making that money there and putting the money into the car. I used to be the sort of person that would literally try and do every single bit myself, but over the years and sort of getting a bit older and learning a bit more, learning your limits, you're good at making money over there, do that, and then pay someone else that's good at what they're doing, because in the end it'll be more efficient for you. Although there's a higher dollar value on it, it's actually more efficient. This has been way more a longer chat than I'd originally anticipated too. So today we're going to rip this engine out and have a bit of a look at it, and then we might actually high five tonight and then go home. That mulch literally stayed there all the way from Bega. That's to absorb all the moisture out of the interior. It clearly did a good job looking at how moldy it is. That's heavier than I'd imagined. Whatever that was. Go on now though. Don't need this anymore. That is on there, far out. That is not light. They have the oxygen sensor cable, right? They run it into the car, but the connector's under the carpet. They did that heaps in the 90s and early 2000s, but we have. I think we had on the Lexus, might even have been. Funnily enough, this is also a Lexus. And this is a terrible idea. I don't know, seriously don't know why they would do that. Like, it makes absolutely no sense to me. Fixed it. Clearly in park. Wow, they're part of the car. That was structural. Just stealing cats. Meow. Damn it. The converter bolts living in JZ. Or that there. Should be right, bro.
Just high-five him next time.
Australia. How you going, mate? How efficient that converter pump is though. Like, that's literally me spinning the motor over by hand with the flex plate not even bolted to the converter, and it's now, it'll pump fluid just spinning it by hand. That's cool. Oh, that one looks like fun. I'm sure that back one will be the easiest one to undo as well. That's heaps easier than punishing myself for half an hour with a hand ratchet. But of course the steering knuckle would be in the way. Just drown it. There's one. Hey, that's $700. I'll nearly get the price of the car back in the scrap. The 2JZ has a block drain, which we're going to take full advantage of. Hopefully get the tray in the right spot. Because it might mean that maybe for once I'll actually take an engine out without losing coolant everywhere. Just once, it'd be nice. My life. Where's the apprentice when you need one? Like, considering how many Ks are on it, it doesn't look like there's a bit of a coolant weep from the very back of the head where that plug is, which would have been an engine out job to fix that. But in saying that, the weep is very minor. It's not even staining down here yet. It's literally just in that screw and plug. Looks all right. I mean, the sump position's correct. Another clue. So yeah, front sump's handy and hard to get sumps separately if you need to change. So it is a good idea actually if you are going to do an engine conversion, try and just source the engine with the correct sump location. There's 3 different JZ sump options, front, mid and mid rear. There's not really a true rear sump. There's the mid sump from the crown, which is a pretty hard thing to come by. And yeah, the mid-rear sump from the Supra or the Sora. The front and rear are the most common ones you'll get. The Crown one is pretty hard to come by, but it's pretty much required if you do actually put a 2J or a 1J in an older Crown, all the way back to like 50 and 40 series Crowns. Al's big block Crown actually originally had a 2J in it when he built it 15 years ago. And it had one of the mid-rear Crown sumps on it, which were pretty hard to come by even then, so I can only imagine what it's like trying to find one now. But yeah, this thing's pretty well good to go. We'll strip it down probably a later date, just get all the externals off it. The flex plate's not going to be used. We're going to have to use an aftermarket stronger version. Obviously this thing's not going to support trans brakes and 1200 horsepower long term. All of this stuff I love, because one of the biggest issues with a Barra is the flex plate bolts to the crank and also to the converter can come loose. Factory, the 2J has 8 bolts from the crank to the flex plate and 6 bolts from the converter to the flex plate, so it's already way more over-engineered than the Barra. I still like Barras, relaxed internet, but it is cool to see that these are way more over-engineered. It'd be really good actually if someone made an 8-bolt Barra crank and flex plate. Being that there are billet crank options out there, I'm not sure why someone hasn't kind of stepped up and gone to an 8-bolt configuration, because there's plenty of material there and there's no reason you couldn't do it. That being said, I'm assuming a lot of the stuff that's made is based on factory geometry so that you could just bolt on a standard flex plate if you wanted to, but by the time you're at that point, I don't really see why anyone's going to be putting a stock flex plate on. But I digress. Here's our 2J. It's going to be a fun, happy time. We're going to build it. We've got some parts coming from all sorts of people, so yeah, it's going to be pretty exciting. But we're going to jam this thing on the ground and pack up, because the day's finished earlier. And now I'm going to high five, because we say it, we never do it. We've high-fived internet. Power steering pumps are normally a bit of an issue on these things as well, and this one looks really good. I don't know if we'll actually use this one because it's got some sort of weird solenoid on it, which may be like a variable speed sort of setup, which definitely isn't going to be something we're going to use. Also, it's got a reservoir built into it. There are reservoir delete fitting kits. You can get like a -10 fitting that can go on there, but I do need to find out if we can actually delete this, what I believe is a solenoid. It's probably something to do with like a variable speed or variable flow. We could use it, but I'm pretty confident we're going to run out of IO with the Haltech, being that this is basically going to be the same amount of inputs and outputs as the Barra, but also with VVTi. I believe this only has VVTi on the inlet side. I'm not right up on 2Js yet, so it's going to be a bit of a learning experience for all of us, but yeah, we're going to be just going with a 2500 on this one again, and probably a PDM, maybe 2. I've got a few little ideas I want to play around with, but yeah, we'll see what comes of that. I'm not going to be completely rewiring the car either. We're going to use a lot of the factory Toyota loom that's in the car still, but there's stuff that will need to be removed. Like any engine conversion, there's always going to be extra wiring and stuff, and I'd prefer to get rid of that rather than just tie it out of the way. But yeah, I still want to basically retain as many of the factory body functions as possible. So yeah, we're going to try and integrate a lot of stuff. I did toy with keeping aircon, but to be perfectly honest, I don't think we're going to have the real estate in the front of the car for an intercooler that'll actually support the power with the aircon core there. Because what I would like to do is basically build a custom intercooler that fits into the radiator support as neatly as possible and as far back as possible. So that sort of 45-50 mil that the aircon core takes up is going to be real estate that's most likely going to be eaten up by an intercooler. Genuinely can't believe how clean this thing is, eh? Well, that pretty much wraps us up for another day, but I did want to touch on one more thing before we basically bail. Something that a lot of people probably aren't aware of, or they probably are these days considering what's in the news and whatnot. Catalytic converters are actually worth quite a lot of money. So another benefit of actually buying a parts car rather than buying a loose engine, you can sell these. Like, these are worth a ton of money. Like, I would take a punt that both of these cats together are probably worth about $1,000 in the current scrap price in Australia, so about $640 US for the pair. That goes a long way to recovering costs of a project car. The other vehicle that I've got that's coming also has it actually has 3 cats in it. So we will be able to recoup quite a bit of money between the 2 cars to put back into the project. You've probably seen a lot of people stealing catalytic converters. Very much do not recommend to do that. However, yeah, if you can prove where they've come from, you pretty much have no trouble selling them to a lot of scrap people. There's always people on Facebook Marketplace looking for cats as well. So yeah, another, realistically a good tip to try and recover costs in your car or your conversion is to yeah, sell the original cats. For what we're gonna do, we can't use these cats anyway. So we're gonna go most likely to a 3.5 or a 4-inch 100 cell cat that we can tuck under the new car. I have already had a good look at that car, and it does have room under the car for a pretty big cat. So we'll probably run that. Potentially we'll run a side pipe for motorsport use. But yeah, we are going to try and sort of make this thing pretty compliant and engineerable. So yeah, we've already had a few chats with an engineer about the process of the car and whatnot. It's going to be a little bit more mild than the Cresta. I do want to have it actually be a lot more comfortable for the occupants. We're not going to cut the rear floor. It's going to have better foot room. The cage is going to be less intrusive because of the body design as well. So there'll be a lot more headroom. The taxi bar is also going to be removable. So we will be able to actually engineer certify that car for 5-seat occupancy. So yeah, depending on the state, currently we can only run the Cresta as a 2-seater. But that's another story. So yeah, if you're going to do a project car, highly recommend to buy a parts car as opposed to buying an engine. Yes, it's going to cost you a bit more time. However, a lot of people who are working on project cars already like tinkering. So we've realistically, including filming this today, it's only taken us about 2.5 hours from start to finish to get the engine out. You may have also noticed that I split the transmission from the engine purely because it was easier to pull them apart and they need to be separated anyway. When I say easier to pull apart, I mean remove the engine out of the car and the transmission out of the car. Luckily, the GS300/Aristo platform has a flange type A340 transmission. So even if you unbolted the tail shaft, it's not going to leak oil out of that back end. But as usual, I always recommend to drain all the fluids out of everything before you remove them. So yeah, today we drained coolant, engine oil, power steering, and the transmission. But yeah, keep all that stuff in mind when you're going to do a project car. Thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you next time.
Why are they worth that much?
The rhodium and palladium, the core materials in them, the elemental materials in the cat are fucking super hard to get at the moment. So a lot of it's mined from like Ukraine.
Yeah, right.
And good luck with that. Platinum's in cats too, I think. So yeah, from a scrap point of view, they recycle. It's cheaper to recycle and harvest the material from them, and the energy's already spent from the mining. So it's actually a lot more environmentally friendly to recycle cats than make new ones. Well, I mean, they're making new ones anyway, but to recycle cats